Picture this. You're hanging out in bed and you just put your phone to charge it and you're like, oh, let me just check my text messages one last time. And you see a text by your soon-to-be ex. And you know it's starting to trigger you already. And against your better judgment, you check it. And just a wave of anger and frustration comes over you. And against your better judgment, you respond. And things don't go well after that. This is the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. I'm Corey Shapiro. In this podcast, we're going to talk about boundaries, which is shift 1 in getting a divorce without losing your mind. All right, I have a story to share which I'm not proud of, but I want you to see the evolution. When I was back in college, I was dating a girl who actually was set up by my stepmom. But after some time, my stepmom turned on her, didn't like her. And we were at a Broadway show and she didn't really want us to date anymore. And my stepmom can be forceful when she's upset and you're not doing what she wants. And at this Broadway show, which should have been a nice time with my girlfriend and my dad, during intermission, she just starts laying into us, trying to break us up. And I felt so stuck and locked down and gotten angry, wanted her to stop. And the best thing I could think of at that moment to just get her to stop was I literally shoved her. And I could see the look on her face in front of all these people. And let's just say that it wasn't a good second half. I don't even remember. But that's where I was back then. And if you're in a divorce, you're not going to have even the opportunity of one shove. So let me put my lawyer hat on and explain what's really going on. First, you're going to be activated, especially in a divorce context. You get these texts, things happen, and it triggers you. And you're not coming from your best self, just like I was so activated when my stepmom was coming down on me. But you can't act out in your divorce, especially if you're going to go to court, because that's going to be exhibit A. And there's no second chances, basically. It's between you and the other side. And if you show poor judgment, like I did, then the court may just rule against you, all things going equal. So what you have to do is realize that you are not superhuman. You're just like me back in college. You're going to be activated, but you can't act out. So what do you need to do? You need to learn boundaries. Now, what are boundaries? Well, you could have physical boundaries. Like if I was going back then during that show, I probably would have left. I probably wouldn't have gone to the second half. Why would I stay there and put myself in harm's way? I knew I was getting out of control, but I didn't choose that option. So you have physical boundaries. And a lot of times in divorce, you can't separate until you have a parenting plan. One parent usually wants more time. The other parent wouldn't agree unless it's 50-50. So you're stuck. So I'm not going to talk too much about physical boundaries on this episode, except to say if you're in one of those where you're just in this toxic situation, my heart goes out to you because it is really tough and you're going to have to divide up your home. Hopefully it's big enough. But I really want to talk about digital boundaries because that's something you can control. Our phones are with us all the time. We get emails, we get texts, and we can control how this information gets to us. We don't need notifications going off all the second we get a text or second we get an email, especially coming from your soon-to-be ex. That's what I want to focus on is how to create boundaries to protect your well-being. All right, now I know what you're thinking. What happens if there's an emergency? That's what I get. I have some people who go to court, they won't even turn off their phones. The judge says, turn off your phones. They don't do that because they're afraid they're going to get some type of notification from the school, from the other parent, something about their children. Okay, now I understand there's going to be emergencies, but what I'm saying is your mental health is more important than an emergency. And if there really is an emergency, they could call you. Okay, it doesn't have to be through email or through text. So that's step 1. Step 2, you might be thinking, they're going to get angrier at me if I don't respond right away. Well, that's that is a shift that I want to really talk about, because it's not your job anymore to manage their emotions. You're shifting from being only a spouse to only being a co-parent. That's a big shift. And that's a shift you're going to have to do. And I know it's hard, especially in longer marriages, because you're so used to managing their emotions, so used to taking care of them, especially if you're a caretaker. So you're going to have to stop doing that. One other thing I want you to think about is when you're going to look at these emails, when you're going to look at these texts. If you don't have a morning ritual, I want you to start thinking about it. We're going to go over this often in this season, but let me just discuss this. My morning ritual literally is reading. I do journaling. I do what I'm, grateful for. I do meditating. I really set myself up for success. But when I started off, probably back in the day, the first thing I would do is look at my emails or texts. And then I'm controlled by other people's agenda. I'm not giving myself space. And then you might be saying, well, I don't have the time to do that. You can get up 15 minutes earlier. It doesn't have to be an hour, even 10 minutes earlier, and do this. And you build from that. My niece recently just ran the marathon. And she didn't start when she started running 26 miles. She started small. So think of that. So my big message for you is, boundaries is not about keeping people out. It's really about protecting your peace. Just like I should have protected my peace back in college. And just like you need to protect your peace, especially if you're in a difficult divorce. All right, let me give you one tiny little action step to do this week. I've noticed on text messaging on the iPhone, when I just updated my operating system, that they have the ability to filter messages that come from unknown senders. So here's what I suggest. Take the name away from your soon-to-be ex from your contacts list. No name, okay? And then when they text you, it's not going to go into your main text feed. If you set it up, you have to go into settings and then just hit this little option to remove, unknown senders. And they're going to go into a different filter for unknown senders. And then what you want to do is check that at a time that works for you, not before you go to sleep, not when you wake up, maybe at the end of the business day. That's what that would be a good time, or maybe during lunch, sometime that works for you where you have, room to get back to balance before, you go to bed, or before you have to do important things. Maybe you do important things in the morning. And I know this is hard work. But this is the work that changes everything. Next episode, we're going to focus on shift number 2. We're going to build on this with the 24-hour pause. I'm Corey Shapiro. Let's step forward with clarity together.
This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.